at least, so.
It's 6:03. We'd like to open up our city council meeting. I'm going to start off with a pledge of allegiance by Councilman Campbell, and Councilman Shave is not here, so I'll say the opening prayer tonight. Please rise. And begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we're so grateful that we could come together this evening as a city council and citizens. Please bless us that we will be able to fill the needs of the city. We thank you very much for all that we have, this wonderful city we have to live in and serve, and the wonderful citizens that are here. We're so grateful for the resurrection of your Son, Jesus Christ. Thank you for all that you do, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, we're going to move into approval of our agenda.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the order of the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any declarations of conflict? Anybody disclose?
No.
Perfect. Consent agenda, review and possible approval of meeting minutes from April 2nd, 2025, city council meeting.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes from April 2nd.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Public forum. Anybody from the public can come up and speak about anything. Limit to 3 minutes. All right, we're going to close the public forum. We're going to move on to item F1. Discuss the possible action on nightly rental application submitted by Jeffrey Thomas. Tax ID TTACC-2. Current zoning is R120 single family residence. Emily, go ahead on this.
This was a nightly rental application submitted by Jeffrey Thomas, who's here tonight. The home is down in Cholla, but it's not within the Cholla Creek subdivision. So he did meet all the requirements, and Planning Commission did unanimously pass it. There was some comments from the public on concerns within the subdivision. So their recommendation came with a condition that he would give the tenants information on what was public and what was private near them, how to get to the TRE park versus the Cholla Park. And he was fine with that.
Okay. Any questions?
I can give a little more background. So this property is kind of unique because you have Cholla Creek and then it's situated in the middle and it's not part of the HOA. So you have a non-HOA property in the middle of an HOA that doesn't allow any rentals, right? So the question that came up at Planning Commission was how to mitigate those effects, because keep in mind, you guys can approve this with conditions. Like if you think there's any sort of conditions that would mitigate the effects on the HOA owners. So like Emily said, she summarized it well. The HOA owners were concerned about those who use the rental coming onto the private park that belongs to the HOA, because keep in mind, the property is situated in the middle of the HOA, right? So that was the primary concern that came up at the Planning Commission level, and the way they addressed handling that was just requiring Jeffrey to give a map of the HOA to the residents and just informing them that they can't go on the private land. So I just wanted to expand on what was said.
All right.
Where does that sit, right in the middle of it?
We pulled it up during Planning Commission.
Bob Brueggemann's old house, just down from it.
Yeah.
The one
Yeah.
that's just down off the hill from his place.
Correct.
And that's not in the HOA.
It is not. It's Bob Brueggemann's old property was not in the subdivision. That little section in the
Kind of the
middle.
corner by Ty, right? Just below Ty, right?
It's
Nice driveway.
actually by the Handsoms.
Yeah.
I don't deal with something like that when everybody else around it don't want it.
Well, it's a tricky situation, but at the end of the day,
Property owner.
they're entitled to it. They're not within the HOA, so they're not subject to the same restrictions as the HOA. But it's just tricky, and it's just something to consider whether you guys want to impose any conditions to try to mitigate some of those effects, right? People that are renting the house coming onto the HOA parks, using the HOA parks, that was the primary concern that was voiced by members of the HOA at Planning Commission.
Well, I guess nobody from the HOA came to the public forum or
No, there was a
They
lot that
did.
came to the planning
The
commission.
planning
before.
There were quite a few
So-
there.
At planning commission, we require a public hearing. We do not require a public hearing here.
Yeah, I was there, Wayne. I was here I sat in the back for the planning commission meeting. There was a number of HOA members that came, and as Caleb pretty much summarized and Emily did too, their concerns. I think I had two things. One, it came up during the discussion that the parking was not paved. Is that correct, or?
So there is a parking stall that is paved. Right now there's pavement, there's concrete there. And we're in the middle of doing an addition on a portion of the house. And this is not in that addition. This is the existing portion of the house. And so, yeah, we are in the midst of finishing it up, but we would love to get the permit just so that we have it in place. And then after we finish it up, we can start renting it out.
So Jeff's been on the wait list for quite a while for a
Right.
permit, and one just became available. Also, in code, it doesn't require
That's
that
what I'm
they're
saying.
paid.
That was my
Yeah,
question.
Emily's
That was my
right. It's
question.
not
It does
required.
required. Okay.
No.
So
As long as
ADA,
it's off the road.
ADA and all that stuff does not require them paid.
I don't know about ADA, but as far as our ordinance, no, it's not
And it
required to
doesn't,
be.
he doesn't have to
Fire
pay
inspection conform to ADA, not us.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Joey. One other thing, if I remember correctly, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, when planning commission recommended this to the city council, was one of the contingencies no pets?
They did ask if he was going to allow pets.
And we
he
would
said
not
no.
allow pets.
I don't
So-
think they made that part of their condition.
They did not, okay. So as you were talking, that is things that we can
We-
add that might
That's a,
help to suffice the HOA.
yeah, so something like, he expressed that he doesn't intend to allow pets, but just making it part of part of your condition, that's something you can do. Another thing you could do is kind of like a number of strikes rule, right? If he receives X amount of complaints from the HOA, then, his
Yeah.
license could be subject to review, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a matter of how much you guys want
Yeah.
to manage it, right?
Because we got our own code to take care of that when there's a number of.
So
complaints.
right now, your code allows you to revoke the license if it becomes a nuisance.
Right.
Yeah.
3 complaints, I think it is, or something.
Well, yeah, but we're.
There's nothing in there about number of complaints. I just kind of threw that out there.
Okay.
That would be just something you could consider.
And something, if I can add
Yes, go ahead.
something. So there are some people that are concerned about the rental in that area, but there are neighbors that would prefer to have this one be the rental versus the others. So there are a number of homes in that area that are not in the HOA, and some of them could be soon vacated as people pass away. So there's a pretty large home, the Handsomes, that could, the worry is that becomes a big party house. And so if this is approved, then it's at max 2 people are going to be staying there. We're not going to have a party house in the subdivision. So that's what some people would prefer to see.
Because they're within that, what is it, 500 feet?
Yeah, Emily might remember better than me. It's like 300 or 500 feet.
500.
Yeah. So there won't be another rental in that area.
Okay, any other questions?
Ready for a motion?
Sure.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve the nightly rental application submitted by Jeffrey Thomas, tax ID T-TACC-2.
Would you add no pets? to that motion?
I'm not gonna police pets. That's the homeowner's job. They can decide that for their own thing. And I know that the HOA isn't that, but I don't think the cities should be policing that portion of it myself.
The HOA didn't like pets.
The HOA was concerned with pets going to the park where they don't want pets in the park. And I know you've answered that question and you said you're not gonna have pets allowed. So that's just however the council's comfortable with having that added or just taking him at his word that he's not gonna allow pets.
That's up to him. I don't think it's up to the city to determine whether they're gonna allow pets or not. He makes the requirements and checks every single box. So
Yeah.
to me, it's an automatic approval pretty much.
Yeah.
You meet the requirements, you're done.
Other than like Kayla was saying, we could add additional stuff.
You can approve it with conditions,
If
yeah.
we could, we could.
It's just a matter of how much you want to police it, yeah.
And if you want to carry over planning commission's recommendation to provide the map, I think that would That was their
Planning-
recommendation.
Yeah, planning commission's recommendation was to provide a map showing the HOA private property so that people who came to the rental, they could see, okay, this is where I shouldn't be going. Yeah, I mean, you could add to that and say a description like, don't use HOA property as depicted on the map or something like that.
Joe, you want to modify your motion for that? Okay,
I think he could police his own people, probably.
okay.
I'd
So is that a second?
I'd second it.
Okay. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Joey? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one, Jeffrey. Oh, you're staying. Good. Absolutely. I love it when people stay. All right. Item F, to discuss the possible action on resolution 2025. A resolution of Tocqueville City adopting clarifications and restrictions under the master plan development overlay and PDO ordinance. All right. Where do you want to dive into this? I think we should- So,
You guys can pick up where we left off, or I
Yep.
can touch on a few things. You tell me.
Go for it. Let's.
So I want to real quick, thinking about the Gary's 8-foot, 10-foot thing, chatting with Emily about this is if we let them go 8-foot, just an idea, they could shift one side 8-foot and have 10 on the other. You know, that way they're
So
not,
just
then they
make the
could put a
building-
motor home or something down one side.
You
It
say-
gives them the ability to have a little bit bigger on one side versus the other side.
Well, the only way you could correct that is by having the building separation 2 feet wide. Because then that would force one of them to have to happen.
You could make it bigger, or you could keep them, you could let them, if they're, doing smaller lots and smaller houses, you could have them put 2 8-footers on one side and have 20 feet on the other side. There's just ways they could do that without, and that not eating up into their space. And trying to, but that's, just ideas, just things.
Yeah, RVs has a hard time at 8 feet. You're not gonna do it.
Right.
Because the eve of the house.
And they might have some
I
small,
don't know
some new houses have
If
a
RVs are okay
10,
in that
12 inch
neighborhood.
eave. We're not all doing giant eaves anymore either. It just costs money.
Yeah.
So,
Is there restrictions that they have in those subdivisions as far as
They'll have
RVs parked next to
HOAs.
houses and things, or?
They're active adult, we're not, no RVs, but I don't
But-
know about this.
yeah, it was just an idea, I don't know. You could have the, possibility of shifting them both 8 and then 10 on the other sides. You could have bigger side yard. I don't know.
That is something that we would like if possible, because having an 8-foot side allows us more flexibility in how the lot is utilized.
Right.
Gives them a 4-foot bigger house.
They might want a bigger house, they might want to have something for an RV, they have the room, but
Right.
not this one, but it's just a choice of which one you.
Yeah, they might be able to
buy.
push one over, say, hey, I want to buy one, but can you push it over 2 feet and I can have a little bit bigger side yard or something? And it just, but if we give them to 10 feet and they're trying to put they got a 40-foot wide lot and they got a 20-foot wide house, you got 10 feet per side, but that's, I know 40 feet is too small, but 60 feet and then 30, and you're down to,
I see some 50 footers in there.
yeah,
Frontage.
yeah, 50 frontage and you put a 30-foot house, you're 10 per side. So,
It's a small house.
yeah, that's just it. They're gonna be small houses. They're not gonna put a 5,000 square foot house on a 5,000 square foot lot.
A
So-
quarter acre. They could.
Anyway, so that's just one of the things that Gary was, he was concerned about. But anything else? Questions?
So Kayla, I just want to clarify one thing. I think I clarified it. So we're just going to use 6 again for that thing. So someone makes an amendment or whatever the word calls. So they're going to submit on planning area 6, right? So they're going
Right.
to, if they meet all the requirements that are set forth in this, they're going to submit it. It's going to go to planning commission.
It's going to go to planning commission. Planning commission's going to look at the lot sizes and
And
widths.
the
That's what
ERUs.
planning commission's going to look like.
Yeah.
No, just lot sizes.
Just lot sizes.
Just lot sizes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Then it's going to come here for the.
Then it's going to go
ERUs, bumps,
to the land
densities.
use authority. So right now that's you guys. You guys could choose to designate that at some point if you, for instance, don't want to review these pre-approved applications that meet the standards. But it'll come to you guys and you will review it to make sure it complies with the pre-approved standards and the restrictions that you're looking at right now.
So let's say, this is a big area, but I'm thinking in the future, just so we might not have to come back to this, let's say they have some commercial in there or something. Is there any on the commercial setbacks that we need to look at?
This
I mean, there-
addresses
there- it does
residential
address
only.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
No commercial.
So
We just
commercial
call
would
that
stay
for
with
commercial
standard
standards.
commercial standards.
Commercial will stay with whatever's in the ordinance and the development agreement. I don't know off the top of my head, but this will address residential only.
Perfect. That way they're not.
And it's not gonna require public.
Oh, you're right.
hearing.
It is already in there.
They're not
Yeah.
gonna be public hearings because their entitlement is already there, correct?
When you say there's not going to be public hearings, you mean when they submit these
Yeah, like on
applications?
planning commission meeting.
Yeah, because of how this is being adopted, so it's a restriction. So think of like, you have like HUD and they adopt rules and those are easier to change than like,
Ordinances.
yeah, that's kind of the analogy I'm getting at. So, no, it won't go through the public hearing process.
Okay.
Nice.
So really, I mean, the only thing that I think we should talk about is, I mean, everything else to me is very clear. I think they did a really good job of doing it.
Yeah.
I think we should just look at the setbacks, square footage, percentages, and make a decision and move forward. Do you have any input on the
No,
setbacks?
no. I mean, I understand what Gary was saying and
Right.
You're happy with how it's stated?
I could go either way. Yeah, seriously. I mean,
Well, that's
I
just it.
understand
If
both.
somebody doesn't want to buy a house
Yeah.
at 8-foot lot, they buy a different house with a
Right.
bigger lot.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking at. I mean, my first house had 12 feet on the side of it and I couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
But that's what I could afford at the time. That's what I had.
Right.
So
Does anybody know, so it says the minimum building area is 900 square feet, right? So for that, the smallest thing, so what is the smallest lot that would fit on my side with the setbacks?
900, you have to be no more than maximum lot coverage is 60%.
Yeah, theoretically, it's 1,500 feet, but I don't think that's actually realistic. I don't think you could actually do
1,500
that.
foot lot size.
Yeah, with the setbacks,
You can't make the setbacks.
I don't think so.
So Scott, do you have that?
I mean, like what I'm looking at is, let's say we go to R110, right?
Right.
That's kind of what I'm seeing in this is, we've basically given them the freedom to drop to R110. Sometimes they might want to go
Well,
lower, but
Well, I think some of these might be smaller.
they might be able to go smaller with a smaller house or something like
Right.
that, but.
So what's the
That's what
smallest
I'm
house
curious.
lot are we, just curious?
With a 900 square foot imprint.
Hold on, let me look. I think it's, the smallest is like 12.
You actually have 900 square foot houses?
12,000?
No, it's the house. You
Oh.
said the house. You
Well,
want the house
no, what I'm
lot.
looking at is we have a minimum
Lot.
building area of 900 square feet. So how many square foot of lot does that take to get the minimum building area, 900? Then you add in your side yard, backyards, and, I mean, what's the smallest lot we're looking at here, to me?
Yeah, that sounds really small. I think it's really.
Well, the smallest lot they can have is 10,000.
You can bring it
Or
right
12,
next to
or 12. We don't have a 10,000.
No, they can go smaller lots.
Oh, yeah.
The planning commission has to approve it, though. So that's exactly what I was asking.
Yeah, it can be they can meet the pre-approved standards, which once you approve pre-approved standards, if they come and they conform to those, then their application should be approved, or they can apply on a case-by-case basis. They can say, no, we need something different, and they can submit something different than these standards, and then it goes through a different process.
Because you got
You get to have more discretion then when it's on a case-by-case basis.
and you still have the 60-foot frontage to protect that too. I mean, 60 foot's.
There's things that constrain it.
Yeah.
You have,
I'll break it to.
There's 50-foot frontage.
50 foot.
There's a
Oh, did
50
it
foot,
drop?
there's a 50 foot, which is
frontage.
really small. I don't know if that's- So are we,
Oh, I didn't print that new one out, did I? Because that changed it.
Yeah.
that's
50 foot, Joey.
I mean, are we, because we don't have that.
we don't. That's what this is.
And this is saying
this
like
is-
you have it. so
There you-
don't have
there you
it.
go.
It's not-
There's your-
everything. So are you gonna go on a case by case?
No, this is, if we pre-approve that they can do these without coming and going case by case. But back to,
That's too small of a lot that anybody ever dreamed of. What is the size of that lot?
That's why I'm asking.
what's that?
5,000 is the smallest.
5,000 square feet?
So these are the cottage lots that D.R. Horton do with
Those are
those
little teeny
10 feet setbacks on either side and 20 in the front, 10 in the back.
Single family, right? One person could live in that house.
And it's 5,000 square feet lot.
Maybe two. You squeeze in two.
They're 2-story.
Are they two-story or what are they?
They can be.
Yeah.
But like you guys said, like Emily said, these are 10-foot sides, right?
They will be.
Well, they have 8.
Unless they,
No, I'm talking, but the example up here, these are 10 foot.
that's what he said, most of them are built as, yep.
But if we let them go 8, then they can shift it one way or the other.
Right.
Well, so my question is, when did it drop to the 50? Because it was 60 before.
It was, yeah. So that was based on these lots, and that's why I brought it up. So this is one of their most popular products, and it does still fit within, I mean, it's a 10-foot setback on either side and fits the setbacks on the rear and the front. But most of
You
them are
said 10?
50 foot.
10 foot on either side?
On
That was
either
8.
side,
It says
yeah.
8.
Let's hear it says.
So we talked to Bruce about it, and we thought maybe we could add in like a sub, like on lots smaller than 6,000 square feet. Then you could do a smaller frontage. And he thought the majority of them are going to be far bigger than that. So all of these are 60, 75, 90 right here. So just making the minimum at 50 just kind of gives them, they can go that far down, but no further without your approval.
Right.
So that's up to you.
Yeah.
Is that some kind of a buffer, those bigger lots?
It's not.
Something on the other side?
They do need a buffer if there's R120 on the other side. These are not. This is just kind of showing how those subdivisions end up. Like most of the lots around the outside are bigger. And then they kind of go a little smaller, and then cottage lots and then townhomes.
So you have basically the small ones there across the street are 6,000 square foot, just based on the 60 by 100. Yeah.
That's correct.
And there's gonna be like cut slopes in the backyards.
Right.
And stuff, because it's against BLM.
Makes up you need the bigger lots just to get
So
a
the
place to put
upper
a
part
house.
is BLM there.
Yes, that's correct.
Lots of people cut down.
There's your 11,000 square feet on
So,
Those are some bigger ones.
so Emily, you brought up a point with if it backs up to R120.
That's in the code, that it has to be R120. So
Right, but it also says in here that, it says that it must meet R120 unless the developer can demonstrate the requirement will prevent the developer from achieving. So then they would have to come back and demonstrate that to us or to the planning commission.
That would
Are
actually.
you looking at page 3 on the other
I'm looking at
notes?
page 3, the asterisk.
Okay.
The asterisk under other notes.
The only
Talking
place
about where it
that, the
borders.
only place that border applies
Yeah.
is the complete border of the PDO. So
Right.
anything inside. So the only place right now that has R120 backed up to it is at the south of of Westfield.
Yep.
So that's R120. So there's a place right there that's like 5 miles, 4 miles. That's R120. That's the only place that even.
Okay. So, I mean, if it does happen, what's the process? They come back to us as a land authority, or it has to go through planning commission and then?
Well, most typically what we're gonna say, or what should be said, when it's written in the code and not in here, is the code says that that's there to protect the citizens.
Right, no, I
of
understand,
R120.
I understand.
So the answer should be say, hey, create the buffer.
You guys will have a chance to evaluate
We'd definitely have a
buffer.
chance.
Case by case kind
You
of
would have
thing
to
again.
be.
A big,
There's language about the buffer in the
code
ordinance as
says
well.
this. They would
Okay.
probably,
Yeah.
All right.
like, the planning would probably, if it went to the planning commission, they would have to deny it because it says in the code.
Right,
And then if it came here and we denied it, then they would appeal it, but
okay,
that would be the process.
right, okay. That's what I was looking for. Okay, thanks.
So in them little house plan things you just showed me there, are they requiring a 5-foot setback or can you give them a little more?
Those are the 8 foot.
8 and some, most of them.
Most of them are 10.
The size of them?
Yes,
Most of them. but
most of them are 10.
Some will be 8.
Some are 8 right
some
now.
will be-
And Kayla, what was it that you wanted? Did you had more that you wanted to expand on or?
I think I touched on it. Did I miss anything, Emily? I mean, I just want to make clear the process, right? So lot sizes and lot widths will be evaluated by planning commission. And then even if they comply with these pre-approved standards, it's going to come to you guys right now because you guys are currently the designated land use authority. You can change that. So you might say, well, we don't want to review it if it's pre-approved. Let's kick it to staff. Or you might hang on to it for now. It's up to you. Okay. So you guys will review it for compliance with these pre-approved standards. So make sure you're okay with the pre-approved standards.
okay. Questions? Joey, what else you have?
Well, I think that's the only thing we should really look at then is because
So
Everything else.
you're liking percentages, the 60% max lot coverage, the 40% open space per lot? I mean, are those all good? Because you were talking about percentages and setbacks and.
well, I mean, the other part of the open space is they still have to meet that.
They
first
do.
minimum
They have to meet
requirement. So, I mean,
all that, yeah.
That's gonna be up to them too.
Right.
I think, and just kind of going with Gary, the only thing is the side yards. I mean, really, that's just the side yards is really Gary's only hang up.
Yeah.
And
And,
mine,
yours,
but some are 10 and some are 8.
right.
There's no 5s.
No, there's no 5s on here at all.
Unless they had an accessory building in the back or something that allows
Right.
for 5.
Yeah, that little shed.
We tried to compromise already with the 8, so.
Yeah.
the only thing you could do, because I mean, like Justin's saying, is if you did shift that, if you go down to the single story side separations and shifted that to like 18 or 20, that would be the only way to really achieve.
They'd have to go back up to minimum setbacks on your side, go to 10, 9 or 10.
Well, they might on one, but
Right.
not the other one. So in an instance where we had 8 and 10 on one, you'd still be good,
Right.
or something in that
Yeah.
nature.
Yeah.
That's-
Or if they had 8, yeah. I hear what you're saying. But you'd have to give them an 8 up on top, and then you could give them an 18 on the bottom, so they had to be 10 on one side and 8 on the other, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, kind of, if you wanted to.
I don't know if I wanted, yeah, I don't know.
16-foot separation compared to what's in desert color
Right.
is giant.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're looking at like 8 feet. Is it 8 feet over there? Separation?
That's 5 per side,
I think they got stuff.
5 per side.
Yeah. You can't even walk around the air conditioning unit.
Yeah, it's
Period.
5
Like
per
it-
side,
there's-
there's 10 feet
It's just
total.
unusable land on them, so.
I know you had me change one of them, but I can't remember which one it was.
They've been pretty successful.
That means that's 10 between buildings?
Yeah.
And so 16 feels luxurious to me.
Yeah, you can lay down twice, plus some.
I just like it, my house, I can't throw a rock far enough to hit a neighbor, but that's why I live where I am.
Throw
But
rocks at
I do throw rocks usually, but people love 6, they're gonna come and say 16, this is huge, or they're gonna say 8 per side, that's from where I come from, so it just, everybody's got it's what we're used to, what we're expecting, we've lived in a different life for sure here in Tocqueville, so.
We're giving up the rural aspect of it.
Not only
Obvious.
in this spot, in this one spot.
We're not living there also,
No, we're not.
and you choose to live there.
That's right.
If they want to live somewhere else in one of their other half
Exactly.
acres, they
Yep.
go to that.
Absolutely. So
That's
that's,
really the side yard thing, but at 8 feet, they're not gonna be parking no RVs.
no,
But
no.
Well, they don't want them to.
They don't want to, yeah.
They don't want that.
So,
Look,
okay. Questions? Darren, Ben, you guys are good?
I just noticed that this 2-story side separation is 20. I think we intended to change that to 16 just so it matched, but
This says
You
16
can-
on this one, 2-story side separation 16.
okay.
2-story rear separation is 20, but the side is 16.
It is, okay.
Yep.
Good. And that's the one that we want to go off of, unless you want it to be 20.
Right.
When you start messing with different site separations, it's hard to.
From the setbacks.
Building.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you've already got a subdivision built on 5 of that. Wayne, what do you think? You good?
well, I like 8 better than I did 5.
Me too.
I like a 10, but then you gotta think about it. It's-
Yeah.
The whole, Gary's argument is valid, but it is not gonna be like it is.
Right,
here.
right.
And
We don't have
so
the-
people have their choice, and I think 8 feet will be,
Yeah.
especially with the, well, it doesn't matter, 8 feet, if you have a 3 feet eve, you still got some shade. So
Yeah.
a little bit of livelihood there at 8 feet.
Well, to me, I mean, we're sitting here and you're
16
talking about,
apiece.
if you increase it to 10, you're gaining 4 feet. You know, and I know 4 feet in between every house is a lot, but at the same
It's
time.
gonna start eating up
Yeah, I mean,
their,
you're just cutting
cutting
the
off
models and.
Right.
It's like just.
Yeah, you're pulling a whole lot.
Yeah.
You get a long enough row of houses, you took a whole house out
You
of
might
it.
have taken one house out of the whole dang thing.
Yeah, on both sides of the road.
Yeah.
And if there's 4 rows, then you're talking 8 building lots.
Yeah.
That adds up real fast. So,
It adds up fast, but it's not, I mean, to me, it's not a big enough change to
it's not,
modify.
yeah. Okay, so I need a
I'm pretty
motion.
happy. Todd, you good?
Yes.
In this motion, let's make sure to say we're approving this in our capacity as the land use authority, because we are wearing a different hat when we're approving this, and it's important.
Okay. Mayor, I make a motion to approve resolution 2025.XX, resolution of Tocqueville City adopting clarification restrictions under the master plan development overlay as the,
Land use
Land use
authority, in our
authority.
capacity as the land use
in our
authority.
capacity as the land use authority, as the land use authority.
Okay, I have a wordy motion.
I'll second it.
I have a quick second. All right, any further discussion? All right, we're gonna start with Todd.
Aye.
Aye. Joe.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. All right, item F, to discuss the possible action on the letter of support for SB 67 special session. This is a letter to St. George City, Fire District, Laverton City, Washington City, Santa Clara City, Ivans. We're trying to get the governor to open a special session for SB 67, which is our fire department. Yeah, well,
You didn't make it.
it passed, this is the funniest thing, so it passed on a second class county. And then somebody else had a bill that changed Washington County to a third class county. So they changed Washington County to third class county, but the bill they passed for second class doesn't work for Washington County anymore because we're not a second class county. So, yes, I'm a little frustrated, if you can imagine. So we're petitioning the governor to make sure this bill gets in a special session. So I've already signed one from the district and from St. George City, but I'd love Tocqueville City to send one as well. So,
Mayor, I make a motion to approve the letter of support for SB 67.
I'll second it.
I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Item F4, discuss the possible adoption of fiscal year 2025, 2026 tentative budget and setting of a date for the public hearing. Ben, where would you like to have this public hearing?
May 21st.
May 21st.
Isn't that right? Is that the second meeting in May? So I wanted to do just a brief presentation because again, budget presentations are best done bite-sized, just little bits at a time. So if you don't mind,
We love your presentation.
I'll take a few
We
minutes.
love them. They're quick.
Yeah, you
And
can only
informative.
digest so many numbers at one time. I feel like after about 5 numbers, you just kind of glaze over. So the few topics that I wanted to cover today relate to conversations that we've had with council members in the interim between the admin budget and this budget presentation, as well as changes that occurred between those two budgets, because those are the most relevant things that I felt should be touched on. So the first was fund balances as of like today or March 31st, actually. It's important for the council just to know how many dollars we have set aside in each fund, what the reserves are for each fund. So I wanted to go through those. General fund, so this is where we retain our recreation, arts, and parks money. And this can be used for operating parks. My preference is that we use general fund unrestricted dollars for maintenance, and then we set aside this wrap money kind of for the original intent, basically to bolster the infrastructure. So for example, this money is dedicated in the next budget cycle to build Westfield Park. That's part of the contribution. One of the 3 contributions for Westfield Park is this set aside that's been kind of saved up for a couple of years from arts and parks, recreation, arts and parks. So right now there's $180,000 in that restricted fund. Unrestricted money, this is that kind of rainy day fund, or general unrestricted, can kind of be spent on anything. This is one we've talked about in the last budget presentation. The dollar amount there is about $560,000. And again, this is a little bit low. I think this is in like the low 20% range. Don't want to dip much below that. So capital projects, we have a number of assigned categories in capital projects. I'll just hit on those. We have one that's assigned, and I forget what the designation for the $120,000 is. I'd have to look back and report on that. I meant to look it up before this meeting, but forgot to.
Turn lanes.
120,000 for turn lanes. That could be.
Oh, yeah, a portion of the turn lane.
And as an update, while we're talking about that, the project is officially closed. So we've received the funding from the state on that. That project is done. So we may be able to clear that assignment of fund. If that's what it is, we may be able to clear that out shortly. And then we have a bunch of impact fees. Again, you guys all know what impact fees are, and I'll touch on that actually shortly. But here in streets impact fees, we have 170,000. In parks, we have 190,000. Stormwater has 14,000. And unrestricted is 32,000. So you set aside money in capital projects fund as unrestricted. Basically, when you have an overflow from general fund, or if you're saving up for future capital projects, that's why you'd put money in here.
I was just going to ask you where that 32 unrestricted came from. So, okay.
Yep. And then we also have a capital projects fund for just the parkway. And this is the remaining funds for the parkway, not including the additional $6.5 million. So as you can see, 2.8 million, we're getting kind of close, burning through that money. Yeah. Again, update on that is that we have the draft of the funding agreement with UDOT. It's kind of going through their legal process right now. So that's been done and just waiting on them. Then we have the water fund. We have impact fees of $218,000 for water. We have unrestricted water fund, and this is where you set aside money basically for catastrophic emergencies in the water fund because they can be expensive. So 290,000 is a little bit less than I'd like to see in the water fund reserves. However, the water fund has been fronting the remainder of the cost for the water tank. So there's $450,000 coming back from the state, and that will bolster that water fund restriction again. And I can send these out. I know this is a lot to digest all at once, but if you guys want to see it, it's in the buried in the financials that get approved once a month by council. But sometimes it's nice just to see it by itself. Stormwater fund, because it hasn't been its own designated fund, is $0 right now. But as we allocate that starting July 1st, we'll start to build up reserves in stormwater. Not as critical to have unrestricted funds because catastrophic failures in stormwater aren't as catastrophic as they are in like water. And then I wanted to touch briefly on cemetery perpetual care fund. So I've only aware of perpetual care funds kind of conceptually. And the idea with a cemetery perpetual care fund, specifically in the private sector. So say you have somebody who owns a cemetery privately. The idea is that when you buy a right in a cemetery, part of the money goes into an investment fund. And that investment fund guarantees the interest, essentially the interest yield on that money is supposed to care for the cemetery in perpetuity. If the cemetery goes out of business, that money is supposed to basically just pay for the landscaping, the irrigation indefinitely.
I don't think the $65,000 investment is going to cover that.
It generates like $1,000 a year. It's pretty dismal. And so basically that when governments run cemeteries, oftentimes the general fund is subsidizing it.
And that's where it's coming from now, right?
That is, yeah. It's filling not just, I mean, it's 90-something% of the costs of running the cemetery.
So I don't mean to sidetrack you, on the 65,000, do we take any of the plot burial money and put it towards this?
Yeah. So when the fee for purchasing that plot is earmarked. So a portion of it's earmarked for the perpetual care, and then a portion is just O&M. for that year.
Okay.
But it's something that we want to think about. Yeah, I think a cemetery is better run similar to the private sector, so that the general taxpayer isn't paying for the cemetery. But in order to make that happen, I know we're talking about like a cemetery in the future, what future land would look like, but it's just something to keep in mind that ideally the maintenance is paid for with the investment. But I think we're kind of so far in the hole at this point that it's like, well, we can start to dig out. But so that's where the cemetery perpetual care fund is. I think that touches on fund balances. Any specific questions that we wanted to hit there? I think that kind of covers it.
Can you move the money into something that yields better? Does it have to stay in that?
I mean, we could, yeah.
Put in a CD or something that's.
Right now it's invested in PTIF, which is considered about as aggressive as local governments get. There's some investment funds that you can put stuff in. If we had more money, it might be more appealing. PTIF is pretty secure, but also not diversified. So there's some strategic planning that you could do with investments. There are some funds that actually guarantee like 1/10% higher than PTIF. And if they don't meet that, then they match it. It's kind of an interesting concepts. But the next thing that I wanted to touch on was the budget alignment with our strategic plan. This was a kind of a fun process for us. I thought, at least, for this budget cycle, is how we built that strategic plan and the dollars and cents associated with it. You may remember when I introduced the concept for the strategic plan, I said, we don't have a lot of discretionary funds. What we have is discretionary capacity. How are we going to direct staff to spend their time? What are staff's time priorities? And so when we looked at the strategic plan alignment, I considered both the dollars that were allocated to the strategic plan as well as the hours. And so here you'll see the dollars are $463,000 in total, of which like 97% is the Westfield Park. So it's like $13,000. Most of this is really staff time that's driving a lot of these strategic objectives, which I think is good. I think it's a good approach to how we are doing this. So I did it by position. We estimated the hours for each project by position, and I can run through these acronyms. So city manager is 210 hours, which represents about 10% of my annual time available. I don't, this is the first time I've ever looked at it in this way for any city I've worked for. So each position probably has a different ideal, like the guys running the parks, doing parks maintenance, theirs are probably going to be a lot lower percentages than say the city manager or assistant city manager. So here you can see that Darren's position, we're estimating his time dedicated to this at about 130 hours for the year, which is 6% of his available time. Planning and zoning, a pretty good chunk at 200 hours. The treasurer, 40 hours. Public works director. Now, the tricky thing with public works directors, I also threw in the Westfield Park. We put a lot of man hours to Westfield Park because we hope to do a lot of the landscaping and irrigation in-house as opposed to contracting it out. So there's kind of more time dedicated there just to save money. So that's not really 14% of JD's time. It's somewhere less than that. We only have one strategic plan related to recreation, culture and rec, but it's a pretty significant portion of her job. And so that's 80 hours and also almost 10%. 10% is probably about the right mark because there's so many other ongoing tasks that a position has to do on a daily basis. But anyway, this was an interesting exercise for me to say about how much time each position is spending toward strategic initiatives. Another thing that I didn't include with this is some of the some of this stuff, specifically like 1.3 land use amendments and 1.5 land use code amendments will require some significant city attorney time. right? And I didn't allocate any dollars there, but realistically, there probably is some dollars tied there. So I think generally we aligned pretty well with our budget, and our strategic plan are in healthy alignment is what I gathered from this. So I want to touch on a couple, these are changes that we have from the admin budget to this tentative budget that's in front of you tonight. There's like 5 changes, maybe not even that many. But I want to touch on each one of those changes and why. The first one are impact fee studies. And impact fee studies are expensive. I recognize that, but they're also an investment in the future, especially where it's critical, this last bullet point, it's critical to have impact fees really dialed in, because when we're talking about, we have entitlements to 6,000 residential units in the next who knows how many years, it's really important to get those to maximize that impact fee so that
Ahead of time.
to get those dialed in.
I don't want to be 4,000 houses in and find out we should have been charging more money for impact fees.
Exactly. Yep. It's also important to know impact fee studies are eligible projects for impact fee money. So impact fee money proceeds pays for the studies. So it's not the general taxpayer that's paying for a study update. But I did include refreshing all impact fee studies as part of this budget. Another thing that's come up recently, and we haven't talked about this as a council yet, is the SCADA system, the SCADA for our water system. Just kind of for brief education, SCADA systems are really kind of the brains of water systems. It's what turns valves, opens and closes valves. It's what tells you what levels the water tank is at. Right now, we're kind of operating under a historic handshake agreement with the Conservancy District. It goes back a long time, where there were a few cities that essentially had insufficient SCADA systems, Tokerville being one of them. And it was Ron Thompson that kind of agreed to use the district's resources to install and maintain that. So we own all of the equipment on the SCADA system, but we don't maintain it. And that also means that we don't have access to all the reporting. We don't have access to the administrative side. And the district has 2 staff members that are their IT that also work on their SCADA systems. And so the city has a tendency, any SCADA systems that they're maintaining, that the district is maintaining, cities take a lower priority from the district. And that's just because they have so much else to maintain themselves. It's been requested by JD that the city council consider taking on the expense, and this comes out of the water fund, to actually set up. So again, we own the equipment. So this is just a software transition where we actually own and manage the SCADA system. Here I outlined the costs. So this would be a $5,000 one-time cost, and then ongoing commitment, that's $400 per month, indefinitely. So it costs $400 per month.
And then the man hours to monitor it. And
well, we're already doing that monitoring, but say if there were system repairs that were needed, we would be paying for those direct costs as well. Whereas right now we're calling the Conservancy District and saying, hey, our SCADA system's down. Can you work on it? And they kind of get to it when they get to it. There have been a few instances where they haven't been as responsive as maybe we would hope. Generally, they've been a very good partner, and it's been for a great price, right? We haven't been paying anything. So they basically have
great price. Why change it?
That's one of the questions. And I think it's just to get a better level of service, because we now have this system. Now, I don't want to get too deep into this, but as they've been filling the 2 million gallon tank, we realize that in times of high demand, and this is in the kind of near future, not next week, but there's going to be times when the valve has to be opened from the Yeah, where the Westfield tank won't be able to keep up with the demand on the 2 million gallon tank. And we'll want the SCADA system to be able to draw from Conservancy District water to fill the 2 million gallon tank from the Cotton well. And so again, this requires additional SCADA work. It's not a requirement, it's simply a request that I supported JD in requesting, so.
Is the ongoing commitment 400 per tank per? or is
For
it
the
just
system,
The whole system?
$400 a month.
Doesn't matter how many tanks you add.
Yeah.
Okay.
So who owns all the SCADA?
We own the equipment and the district is maintaining it. So anytime there's a problem, we call them.
So, and in the future, we would still own it.
Yeah.
Um,
The benefits to the city by switching it over. So I talked to Zach about this week. He basically said, we'd love to get it off their hands. And I said, of course you would, because we're paying you nothing to do this. The benefit to the city is that we become administrators and we get a higher level of service that we're paying for, basically. So that's the SCADA for the water fund, from the water fund. And we did the tentative budget includes that commitment.
So the one-time 5,000, that's just this year.
Yeah.
And then it'll be 5,000 a year, basically.
Exactly. Yep. The next item was this town hall property that was acquired. I wanted to touch on this briefly, those two highlighted sections. The one, the kind of more square-like property, you guys have probably seen JD and his crew have kind of,
It looks nice.
yeah, they've made it work really well. And they can now store equipment back there. The question now has become, they've also put up retaining wall along that kind of north-south wall. That was a shared cost with those property owners, so we split the cost on the retaining wall. And now the question is, what do we do with this rectangular piece? The original intent and the reason that it was acquired, from what I understand, was to serve as a driveway, a public works driveway for them to come off of Toker Boulevard. However, after reviewing this and kind of walking the site, it would require a lot of changes to that like brick wall and the gate, but it's also a very difficult 90-degree turn to the left. So if you pulled in with a trailer, it'd be difficult to make that turn. And so the public works guys have basically said as long as there's not a push to stop coming through the parking lot, they would prefer to not use that as a driveway. So, but we still want to fence it off because it's the city's property. So this budget essentially just includes a fence, and then we kind of to be determined what we do with that dirt next. We could,
Get rid of this home.
you could do some landscaping. What's that?
Get rid of this AC.
Oh.
home.
Yeah. Now that it's warming up in here, the condenser out here is kind of loud. So basically, yeah, we're just looking to push that fence back against the city's new property line. And then what we do with that in the future, probably look at some low-cost landscaping options for kind of making that unified with the rest of the property. Any thoughts on that? Just kind of curious.
Buy a goat.
Is it just chain link is what you want to do?
Yeah, that's what's there currently, so. We included $5,000 for fencing and for kind of some basic landscaping there.
Seems cheap to me.
That's not a landscape or not, it's just more water and more grass.
Yeah,
Just
Well,
the
don't
fence-
put grass
fence
on the
alone
road.
should be grand. How can you cost more than that? I'm thinking that's a cheap fence.
Chain link fence or something.
That's expensive.
and that is Public Works doing the labor.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's them doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, the last item that I wanted to touch on, and this was not included in the budget, but I wanted to actually discuss it because it's something that we've discussed in the past. The FEMA brick grant, we confirmed that the reason for this erosion hazard zone map that we received the grant funding for was to unlock future grant money for stream bank cleanup. However, it's become abundantly clear that FEMA funding, at least in the short term, won't be available like it was. So basically if we moved forward with this project, we would be spending about $15,000 to develop this erosion hazard map, but it would no longer unlock the money. And so I actually intentionally excluded this. I omitted this from the budget just because I would not recommend that the city move forward with this erosion control hazard map. I did offer some alternatives for stream bank cleanup, some we've talked about. So community service project, the Hurricane Valley Fire has wildland fire crew community hours that can be used for this, and then just general public works staff time. So I think we have the means to get the work done.
Legally,
You can have a good flood.
go in there and do it though. That's kind of what we've been told, that we can't go clean up the stream unless we have this study done.
I don't think it's, I think that the study or this zone
Right.
would have unlocked additional money. Legally, we can, there's some permitting required, but it's just paperwork.
Great, because we want to clean up. That's just kind of what we've been sold in the past, is we had to have this before we could even go down there and clean it up.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping FEMA just goes away, if you want my opinion, and we can go back to running things how we need to without their overlord and federal government putting their thumb on us.
There's still some paperwork hurdles. There's still a barrier to getting in there and actually doing the
Through
work.
Army Corps of Engineers or?
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
So I recommended just omitting that completely. And that wraps up my presentation of the tentative budget. If there's any questions, happy to answer.
I got questions.
Go for it.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. We didn't get a chance to talk with vacation and things came up. So I did have a few questions on a couple of the items. I don't want to beat not a dead horse. We've talked a lot about Westfield Park. And you've got expenditure of 400,000. And I know we talked about using capital funds from the trails and parks. You talked about a grant, but the way the new administration's going, I wonder if they're pulling back on all sorts of grants. So that might be not a realized funding. But what are some of the other funding opportunities? I mean, is there money that we can reduce within the general fund? Because I know it's a priority for the mayor, for the council, for the staff, for our residents to get that park done. So do we have any avenues that we can?
I don't know if there's any.
We modeled it with 3 revenue sources to complete the park.
Okay.
RAP tax that we already talked about.
Right.
Impact fees, park impact fees.
Okay.
And it essentially wipes those 2 things out. So, and then the last was $150,000 grant. And that money is actually already set aside. We should hear back on it within the next couple of weeks. This is a state.
Oh, so it's
grant
state
source.
rather than
Yeah.
federal. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
So I'm still optimistic about that.
Okay.
And if all else fails, we do anticipate with the additional building permits coming on this year, there will be additional parks impact fees that
Okay.
could fill that gap. It would just draw out a little longer.
Okay. And then looking at the budget, so 2024, we've already spent 213,000 on the park. So this is an additional 400,000, correct? To finish it? Okay.
Mhm.
And then the 50,000 of the pavers, is that 50,000 been spent, or is that part of setting up the pavers?
Well, it wasn't all pavers. It wasn't
Okay.
50,000 pavers. There was, I don't remember how many pavers there was, but
Okay.
there is some paver money, but it's in the park.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, I got that. I understand. And I know it's a priority for our residents because I've heard them talk and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Looking at the culture and recreation budget. So I know that you've reduced the amount of money from 2024, 2025 to this 2025, 26 budget, and the amount of money that you're allocating for the events and stuff. So for instance, the 4th of July, 2024 actual was 11,000 and you've got budgeted 5,000. So are we foreseeing a much smaller pancake breakfast to accommodate that? And I know that if you're looking at some of the other events also, the amount of money being spent is reduced. So for instance, the Christmas party or the Christmas, was almost $12,000 and you reduced that to 5,000 too. So just if you could talk about that.
Yeah. So what we did there is we looked back at the kind of historical spend for events and say if you took these numbers are more in line with like a 5-year average as opposed to looking back like 1 year or 2 years. So we feel like we can still have the same quality of event with spending less money.
So so for instance, the 4th of July, I mean, previously it wasn't such a grand, it was more of just a pancake breakfast. Is that kind of what we're foreseeing or do we know yet? Is it too soon?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely need to consult with Bailey kind of with
Okay.
her.
All right. Okay.
We're gonna
vision
try
for
to
that.
keep it as good as we can. We're gonna
Yeah.
ask for more participation from citizens. to
Okay.
help out. So.
Okay, and then I know that the wages has gone up. So now within the cultural recreation, there's 41,000 that's designated toward wages. So that is quite a significant amount. So if you look at it, and I don't know, I mean, I'm glad that we're having a public hearing and it'd be interesting to see what the public has to say about the fact that we're spending almost $75,000, which is 30% of our property tax on city events. I realize how important it is that we bring our community together and have these events, but is that $75,000 better spent saving and putting it toward the park or something like that? I don't know. I'm interested to see when we do have the public hearing on that. So that would be one thing that I would be interested in. And one thing I do want to point out for our public is that this budget is available if you go on the Tokerville City website and you go to the Utah Public, it'll take you directly to the Utah Public Notices. Make sure I'm saying this correctly. It'll go directly to the Utah Public Notices and this budget will appear on there so they can look at it themselves.
Yeah, and once the council adopts the tentative budget, assuming that happens tonight, then that budget becomes the tentative budget that the public hearing is based on. So right now we've noticed it.
Yeah.
But we'll have printed copies out here.
Okay, also, so that'd be
Yeah.
another way for them to get it. Okay, okay, perfect. All right. If we can go to 140, which is under administration, and that's our legal fees. So you budgeted 190,000 for the 25-26. It was almost 192 for the 2024. That 190,000 is our city attorney budget. Is that correct?
It's all of so it doesn't tie to city prosecutor, so that's
Okay, so that's a
encompassed
separate-
elsewhere.
Okay.
But it does any litigation expenses. So it's not just the city attorney, but it's litigation,
Okay.
contract city attorney.
Okay, so I'll say this carefully. I'll say this carefully.
Oh, you're fine.
Past, present, and future litigation is covered within that 190,000.
That's the budgeted amount. Yeah.
So if we do happen to go over that amount, do we have a mechanism for how we might cover the costs of potential?
Yeah, it's no different than any other budget line item.
Okay.
So when the state auditor looks at the budget, they don't say, hey, you went over, you have a finding because you went over in one budget category.
Right.
So what's important is the bottom line of the budget doesn't exceed what you budgeted to spend.
Yeah, no, I understand the part that you have the ability to move things around, but if we have a potential huge expense, then I guess like Joey said, unrestricted funds or what have you, or
I mean,
I don't know if that's a possible
Yeah,
answer
if
to the
it's-
question, but it's just
if it's
a
big enough
concern.
that it would exceed the total. So oftentimes, what's happening in a budget is you're budgeting kind of ideal, or I don't want to say worst case scenario, but you're budgeting for what you anticipate the expenses are.
Right.
Oftentimes some categories go over, some categories
Right.
go under, and in the
Sure.
end, if your expenses exceed your budget, you do a budget amendment. You have to do a budget amendment. And
Okay.
so, yeah, that's the process.
All right, so I mean, come back to us and what the fair we're gonna do. if-
Exactly.
Okay.
Bruce and Kayla said they're gonna start saving us money.
Nice. Nice. Half right. Half
Okay.
right.
I got one more question. So, and I know we've talked about this before, and I'd like to continue talking about it. It's our vehicle leases. So I know that the vehicle leases are listed under subcategories, so it's all broken down, whether it's executive administration, et cetera, public works. So I went ahead and added it up. So our vehicle leases are costing us $89,300 a year.
Yep.
Okay, and that's going to continue for how much longer?
It was a 3-year agreement, and essentially that, yeah.
So that
I
ends
understand.
what year? What budget, I should say?
It was 2027.
Okay, so that'll be, so this is the 2025-26. We'll have to pay that 89,000 again for the 2026-27 budget, and then it'll end for the 27-28 budget.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Okay, so we have this coming up plus two more.
Yep.
90,000.
Yep.
Okay, and then on top of that, it's almost 16,000 in fuel, and it's another 26,500 in maintenance. So one of my questions, and I don't know if you know the answer, one of my questions is with maintenance, is it different for the government as opposed to a private person? Because if I go out and lease a vehicle for 3 years, normally the maintenance is included, but that's not in this lease.
No, like oil changes we pay for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not like a private work.
Another thing to note is that we have an old dump truck and an old,
Maintenance isn't that.
we have a few older
Backhoe.
vehicles
Okay.
that kind of eat up
All right.
a lot of that.
Okay. Okay. So I mean, it's just so that we're aware, we're spending almost 90,000 on vehicle leases.
Yep.
For another 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. My next question, and please don't take offense to this, but when the vehicle leases were put forth, that was before you were here, Ben, but the vehicle leases were put forth and it was designated for the city manager, assistant city manager, mayor to have vehicles within this vehicle lease. That was the purpose of it. So we have a vehicle lease for you. We have a vehicle lease for assistant city manager, and the mayor has one. But both
Plus the public works.
yeah, plus the public works, which is what we know. So both of you have chosen not to take a city vehicle. So in return for that, you guys are receiving a stipend.
Correct.
And if my calculations are correct, we're paying almost $15,000 a year for you guys to have a stipend when the vehicles are here available for you. So couldn't we save 15,000 if you guys drove those vehicles and we've got a lease for another 3 more years?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the vehicles was returned.
Yes.
That was done as part of the prior lease agreement.
Right.
And when the city council actually requested that the stipend be included on the other contract, we looked at returning that truck. And basically it was, you may remember that these were 0 interest lease payments
No, I understand
for
that.
2 years. And so we had to pay down the equity. And basically what happened is it didn't matter if it was returned or if we kept it. It was going to cost the same. And so we're at this point, we made the decision to move forward with that. And the council chose to include those stipends. And this is kind of a side note, but transmission control module in one of the trucks just went out again. And so basically we have, and it's tied up for another 6 months. So
Yeah, no, I understand the reasoning behind Darren having a truck and the mayor having a truck. Because when it was sold to us originally, it was like, if there is a public works truck that goes down, then either Darren can give it to him or the mayor can give it to him. But my question more specifically, it's almost like we're paying twice because we have vehicles for both you guys to drive.
We got rid of one of them.
Well, we still have 2 white ones out there that are part of it. And one of them, I think, was the previous city manager's, wasn't it? No.
No.
All right, well, okay, well, we've still got 2 sedans out there. Plus we've got the black truck, Darren's truck. So essentially they're just sitting out here in the parking lot, except for if the staff needs it to run something or what have you. So go ahead.
The mayor.
I'm driving the black truck now because the other white truck's in the shop.
Okay, so that's a pullback. Yeah, I understand that stuff, but we're still paying for trucks out here and paying you guys a stipend.
No, it's important to know those vehicles aren't available as receiving the stipend myself. So our contracts basically say the city manager and assistant city manager are paying for maintenance and fuel, and those cars aren't available for us to use. They are admin vehicles. Does the city need 2 admin vehicles specifically? That's a question, but it's the situation that we're kind of in right now. So, yeah.
So then let me rephrase that question. Could you and Darren move into those vehicles and use them for your vehicles, and we can stop paying $35,000 a year in stipends?
And this is a conversation that city council's already had as part of contract negotiations.
Okay, well, then I'm bringing this up again as far as our budget discussions, and whether the city council would like to revisit the way we.
I think the time to open that is when during contract negotiation, right? When the contract negotiations are up, that book has essentially closed. I mean, I hate to say it like this, but it's the city council negotiated that contract at the time of execution, and it's done. One of those vehicles was returned.
Well, I understand that, but we still
I'm
have.
going to just, pony off of what Ben said. So I do think he's right. If you want to renegotiate that, you would have to amend the employment agreement. I don't remember what it says, but I'm guessing everybody would have to agree. Reopening the employment agreement is the way you go about that. I'm not sure off the top of my mind of another way to do that without amending their employment agreement.
I just find it interesting that we have a $90,000 for vehicle leases, and we're still paying almost 15,000 as stipends.
Well, we could look at it.
When we have vehicles that are
we
sitting
could
out.
look at it like, instead of $90,000 in leases, we're buying these vehicles that are going to cost us $150,000 a year to make payments if we started buying all the vehicles.
Well, and that's our
then
intention?
That, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. You're looking at one number, but you could be looking at a bigger number
Well,
if we were purchasing
if we are
vehicles
going
every year.
if we are going to purchase
So-
the vehicle, it would make more sense for us to purchase them now, wouldn't it, rather than continue.
Well, no, I'm not,
continue to
no,
pay the
I'm
lease
not,
before we.
I'm not talking about the leased vehicles. I'm saying you got to look at all your numbers. If every year you bought a new vehicle, you're going to be spending $90,000 per year basically to buy, and then they're going to wear out. And then so every year you're going to be spending the money, whether you have the $90,000 in leases or $90,000 in purchase price of new vehicles every year.
I understand,
I'm hearing what you're saying.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, but when these vehicles go back,
We either have to.
then we're going to reevaluate how many vehicles we need.
Exactly.
And
whether
we're going to purchase or lease them, or
lease.
whether we're going to purchase out of here what we want to keep at a reduced amount. So, yeah,
What I understood back a year or so ago when that happened, if we took the 2 back, that basically kind of breaks the lease, and then it would be more expensive.
It was.
Cheaper to keep.
It was
the 2
cheaper,
vehicles,
it
just to
was.
keep them, let them sit, because
Yeah.
we're locked into that lease
Exactly.
we were locked into.
Right.
Right.
So we're not paying anymore, but we can't get any money out of them until the lease is up, then they go
Right.
back.
And they go back and yeah.
Yeah.
That was
I remember
that was
that
the idea.
conversation because
That was the idea with mine.
Because we'd be
Take it
spending more now for vehicles if we just sent those 2 back.
Right,
We
no,
wouldn't have to.
I understand that.
Because it's a lot,
We
it's
just
a
had,
lot
got stuck in a
cheaper.
bad lease.
Right.
Right. And when the vehicles go back at the end of these, the residual value should already be set, is it not? So we should already know what we're going to
I don't.
turn those vehicles in for, correct?
Yeah, that's at the most recent negotiation that we did in the fall, sorry, not negotiation, but lease agreement that we did. That's what it did, is establish that residual payment because we're actually paying down the principal, which we weren't doing previously.
Make us pay the lease even though it's in maintenance for 6 months.
Yeah.
Jeez.
The lease pays for the fixing of the vehicle. doesn't it?
The vehicle's under warranty, so that pays for that, but
Oh, yeah, because they're on lease.
Yeah, they're
They're
on-
right. 2 years, yeah.
yeah. So, yeah. I hear what you're saying. It's money.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, anything else?
that's all I got.
Okay.
Nice work. It's good ones, yeah.
All right, so we need to adopt this tentative budget tonight. That's what and then set the hearing for May 21st.
May 21st? Mayor, make a motion to approve the tentative budget and set the date for the public hearing for May 21st for the next budget meeting.
Second it.
Okay, I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion on this?
So the process is, we come back, we set this as our tentative budget.
Right, it has
Then we
30
have-
days.
then we have public hearing, public gets to give their input into it. And then at that meeting, we will adopt it, or
No,
that'll be
that's not until
future.
June.
Yeah, so ideally what happens is you give yourself enough time to consider anything that was mentioned in the public hearing,
Okay,
and then you adopt it, the final budget in either the first meeting in June or second meeting in July. No, June, sorry.
June.
Yeah.
And we have to have it in before July 1st.
okay,
Yes.
gotcha.
Okay.
And so this has given us, this is ahead of schedule of what most cities are doing, just to give us plenty of margin so that if we want to bump anything, we can.
All right, I have a motion and a second. We've had discussion. We'll start with roll call vote. Wayne?
Aye.
Joey?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, calendar events, Arbor Day, Friday, April 25th, Center Street Park at noon. We're gonna plant a tree. We don't know what kind of tree yet. I asked last time if we knew what kind of tree we're planting yet. Okay, still don't know what kind of tree. It'll be green, I hope. All right, summer community cleanup, Saturday and Sunday, May 31st, June 1st. Center Street Park, Trowbridge Estates Park, and Westfield Park for dumpsters. So let's keep our community clean when we have those dumpsters here. It sure makes things nice. All right, we need a closed session tonight
I'll call for everything.
for everything. Perfect, Joey.
Mayor, I'll call a closed session to discuss litigation, security, property acquisition or sale, and or the character and professional competence or physical or mental health of an individual.
Okay, I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We're gonna take a 5-minute break before we move into our